Good morning, everybody. This is Chris Simpson, and I'd like to welcome everybody to the Pre-Professional Virtual Meetup series. And today our topic is going to be what should your toolbox look like? I will be your moderator today. I am the past president of the San Diego ISSA chapter, and I'm the director of the National University Center for Cybersecurity. So before we get into our talk, I'm going to give you a little background about the ISSA Cybersecurity Career Lifecycle and some ways you can ask questions and some scholarship opportunities, and then we'll hop into our panel discussion. So first, the ISSA's Cybersecurity Career Lifecycle program is designed to help professionals at different levels in their career learn about different aspects of the information security field. In this virtual meetup, we'd like to provide our pre-professional and entry-level members to have the opportunity to meet experts in a given specialty of cybersecurity in an informal and kind of relaxed venue. So this is a great opportunity to post questions and ask questions about different aspects of cybersecurity. And so during the virtual meetup, participants can ask questions and learn firsthand what it takes to get the job, what skills are necessary and how to attain the skills, as well as any questions that might help in preparing for working towards the job. And so please use the question box to post your questions in your GoToWebinar panel, and we'll get to as many questions as we can. We typically can get to all the different questions. We hope to continue the virtual meetups with additional guests and topics based on feedback from our pre-professional entry-level members. And so please use the hashtag #ISSA CSCL to tweet about the meetup too. And there's already a couple of tweets out about this session. Before we begin the presentation, I would like to share some information about scholarship opportunities you may be interested in. Everybody knows the education is can be costly, and there's some great scholarship opportunities out there by from ISSA and the ISSA Education Foundation. And they support the education of the next generation of cybersecurity professionals with these scholarships for both undergraduate and graduate studies. During 2016, they have three main scholarships. They have the ISS AEF E. Eugene Schultz Jr. PhD CISSP Memorial Scholarship worth $3,500. They have an ISSA EF scholarship of $3,500. And then they have the ISSA EF Sean Harris Memorial Scholarship for $2,000. You can go to the ISSA EF website at www.issaef.org for specific application and deadlines. And before we kind of get into the panel here, you know, we're going to talk about toolkits, but I think ISSA is one of the great tools you want to add to your toolkit. Being a member of ISSA is a great way to meet other professionals and learn different things. When I first got started in the security field back in 1999, one of the first things I did was join ISSA. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speakers. So first, let me introduce Randall Fritchie. And Randall, please describe your areas of expertise. How did you get started in the industry, and what have you done to make yourself successful?
Thanks, Chris. Yes, so my name is Randall Fritchie. I am the CISO Information Security Officer for QualChoice Health Plans. I am a CISSP, Certified Ethical Hacker, Certified Hacking Forensic Investigator, 24 technical certifications in all. I'm also an ISSA Distinguished Fellow. I have a master's degree in Information Security Assurance. I teach ethical hacking and digital forensics in college courses. Presently, I am the Director of Communications for the ISSA Denver chapter, and I'm also on the planning committee for the Rocky Mountain Information Security Conference. And before I came to Denver, I was the president of the ISSA Kentuckiana, which is Louisville, Kentucky chapter, for 8 years, and I chaired their conference, their Louisville Metro InfoSec conference, for 5 years. I've been involved with the cybersecurity career lifecycle since its inception, and I've been a host or participant as a panelist 3 or 4 times throughout that span of time. Overall, I've been in IT for about 20 years and in security for about 16. I got started sort of haphazardly because I showed an interest and a passion. I showed a good attitude and aptitude. Started out on the help desk because I had no experience and really had no education, no certifications, and showed a good attitude and aptitude, and they put me to work. And before you know it, I was racking firewalls and installing antivirus, and sooner or later I became a security guy. So that was the way I sort of got into security. But really the combination of those things that I talked about, education, experience, certifications, certainly networking with other people in IT, other people in security, going to ISSA meetings and being a participant or volunteer with the ISSA over the years, and having a good passion and a good attitude about it really has helped me a lot.
Great. Hey, thanks a lot, Randall. And that's a really impressive record. And thanks a lot for your continued volunteer support. And just a shout out, I know that Rocky Mountain Information Security Conference is one of the best conferences around, low cost, and a lot of great speakers that you guys get there to go to Denver. And Denver is a pretty easy location to get to. So thanks for that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So next, let me introduce Daniel Palomini. And so Daniel, please describe your areas of expertise. How did you get started in the industry? What have you done to make yourself successful?
Sure, absolutely. So kind of going off what Randall was saying, I got my start in IT about 15 years ago, and at that time I was just doing help desk, and I did help desk for a bunch of years, which, when you do that, it allows you to kind of connect with the users and see patterns of things that users do, and maybe things that they shouldn't be doing. And after that, I went from help desk to being a systems engineer, and I did that for a bunch of years. And newly, now I got my start in information security about 4 or 5 years ago, and it kind of was, I transitioned into our medical school and helped them kind of secure their program. But in terms of being successful in the industry, really to branch out what everybody's saying, for me, I was I helped organize and create one of the B-Sides conferences, which is a great local conference to go to. And one of the people at B-Sides said, well, you're in South Florida, have you gone to ISSA? And I said, well, what's ISSA? He said to me, well, you want to come down to the chapter and check it out. And since joining ISSA and becoming a member of ISSA, I've been the director of communications for my chapter for almost 4 years now. I started up a second security conference down in my area called SoFloSec, and really it's about becoming passionate, meeting people, working on projects with others in the community. So some of the things that have made me successful is just the work I put in to make our community stronger, and also work with others on different projects locally and volunteering nationally.
Great, thanks a lot, Daniel, and thanks for your volunteer work too with ISSA. And volunteering is a great way to is a great tool, right, to have in your tool set, quite honestly. And then the B-Sides conferences, for those listening, if you Google B-Sides, there's B-Sides in large cities and small cities. We're doing our first B-Sides here in San Diego in January, and those are great places to learn things and meet other information security professionals. Okay, David. David Vaughn is our next panelist, so please describe your areas of expertise. How did you get started in the industry, and what have you done to make yourself successful?
Great. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. So my areas of expertise specialize in penetration testing, red team methodology, red team assessments. I also am a secure architecture review, the CISO of Cyber Defense Technologies. Just returned from an overseas deployment, and I guess I can credit my experience from the military. December 1st was my 19-year anniversary. Makes me feel old. But again, like everybody else, how did I get involved is volunteering. All started out with ISSA. I was the director of education, which was really beneficial, learning how to get my career on track and help others with theirs. I think out of all the positions within ISSA, that one was the, to me, in my opinion, was the most valuable because we provide return on investment for those people that are paying money to be a member of this organization, right? So our main goal is to provide return on investment back to the membership. Outside of that, I am also the secretary for the Raleigh chapter of IC Squared. I was the president of the High Tech Crime Investigators Association. I'm a member of the Financial Crime Investigators Association. If you can tell a theme there, I am a licensed forensic examiner and certified expert witness, which is what I did with the military as a military police officer. So lots of little things, kind of jack of all trades, master of none, but definitely enjoy volunteer work. I am also a B-Sides founder as well. We started B-Sides Raleigh, had a successful event in October, and we're going to be planning to start all the planning process next 3 or 4 months for next year. So another great event, but I go to most of the major cons like Black Hat, DEF CON, DerbyCon. You can always volunteer for these events, and a lot of the times it's we'll get you in free. You just have to put in some elbow work. But pretty much every major state has a B-Sides event now. I would encourage anybody to look into it. And if there isn't one in your area, it's not hard to start one. So that's how I got started.
Great, thanks a lot, David. And yeah, with the B-Sides, I might hit you up offline because I'm helping organize the one here and maybe get some of your lessons learned. And you bring up a good point about other organizations. I know here, like in San Diego, most of us belong to all the different groups like ISC Squared, ISACA, OWASP, because it's such a great community and it's a great way to learn different things. All right, so thanks everybody for your introductions. So now what we're going to do is kind of dive into the topic now. So what I'd like to do first is I'll go around and we'll just give everybody a chance to say what your favorite free tool is. It can be specific for defense, attack. It can be a career type of tool, whatever you think is best. So we'll start with you, Randall. So what is your favorite free tool?
Thanks, Chris. Well, the favorite tool really depends on the task at hand. I would say the tool that I use the most is Nmap. That tool is very functional, allows me to scan ports, see if there are open ports. Quite a few things you could do with Nmap. Netcat's certainly another one that's used quite a bit. Check connectivity of ports. Virustotal is a website that I use a lot to see if something is malicious or been reported that way. Nikto is another one that I check for web applications. Certainly cannot leave out Vmware. Vmware has been an amazing tool to allow me to stand up test instances, and certainly in an enterprise sense allows organizations to save a lot of money. And then from a firewall standpoint, I use pfSense a lot. pfSense is free, open source, allows you to configure quite a few things from a firewall standpoint. So like I said, just depends on the instance, but those tools are very helpful for me.
Great, thanks a lot, Randall. And could you describe a little more about what VMware is for those that are maybe kind of new to the field?
Sure. So VMware is just virtualization of the operating system, and VMware is one brand, hypervisor based. So you have a physical host, and then you have virtualized servers or desktops, and you use that tool in order to give it, CPU, memory, disk space. But you can have 15 virtual machines running on one physical host. So that's really the value of virtualization. And then Microsoft has their brand, several others as well. VMware is the one that I was trained on, the one that I use most frequently. But it just allows you to leverage one physical box to create multiple. So I can have a pfSense firewall running in a Linux box and a Windows server and a Backtrack or a Kali Linux box, multiple boxes running on one physical host. So I don't have to go out and buy a bunch of servers, but I can stand up multiple servers in a virtualized instance. Yeah,
great. Thanks, Randall. And so virtualization tools are a great way to kind of build your own home lab. Some you have to pay for, some are free. VirtualBox is free. If you're a student, a lot of universities have their academic partnerships, so you may be able to get free access to those tools. And don't be overwhelmed. We're throwing a lot of different tool names. We'll be sharing out some of the links for all these different sites. And in many cases, you can just kind of Google the name of the product, and you'll be able to get that too. But we'll make sure we get the links out to some of the different tools that we talk about today. All right, Daniel, over to you. So, what's kind of your favorite free tool?
So it's a surprise, but my favorite free tool is also Nmap. Pretty much use Nmap on a very regular basis to kind of just at least get a sense of what's in the environment. But really going out to that, we also we see a lot of people in our organizations that like to stand up their own web servers. So one of the other tools that I like to use a lot is a WP scan to be able to brute force or see maybe some people set up their WordPress instances not so securely, or find what installed plugins they have, do kind of vulnerability scanning with WP scan. But also I like a lot of scripting things. Whatever can make my job, if I have to do it once, if I don't have to do it time and time again, whether it's Python or an Ansible or something that allows me to script things, that's my favorite tool because it's going to save me time and allow me to produce results without having to do it over and over and over again.
Yeah, perfect. So some great recommendations there. And the other thing about Nmap, it kind of forces you to learn about ports and protocols too. So the more you use it, the more you're going to learn about the kind of key network fundamentals. And one thing too, I want to make sure everybody listening knows is we kind of talk about these different tools. You never want to run any of these scanning tools without authorization. So if you have your own home lab, you're welcome to do all kinds of scanning, but don't go to Microsoft.com and try to run some type of vulnerability scan against those organizations. So always make sure you have authorization before you use any of these tool sets. Great, thanks for sharing that, Daniel. Oh, good.
We refer to those as resume generating events.
Yeah, they can, and not in a good way, right? So
yes.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. All right, David, over to you. So what's your favorite free tool?
So I made a small little list. PowerShell and Python, obviously, for scripting. For all those guys, team members that like to do Nmap and stuff, you can actually do a full pen test for a client with just PowerShell. There's a good speaker by the name of Chris Campbell, goes by Obscure Sec on Twitter, did an entire talk on doing a complete pen test with no other tools, no Metasploit, nothing, just PowerShell. It's a phenomenal talk, really funny. Another one that everybody forgets, but we all use it, Google. You can write API calls to Google. So you could do Google dorking if you're looking for something specific. Really, really powerful tool, and I don't know where many of us would be in our careers without the use of Google. It's kind of sad, right? My favorite distros, Kali for pen testing and ADHD for defense. ADHD was created by Black Hills Security and John Strand. It's a really neat tool for active defense, which is what it stands for. Active Defense Humdinger Distro is what it's called. Suricata and Bro for IDSs. And Autopsy for forensics, and Armitage for giving a visualization of Metasploit. For those guys that don't like CLI or looking at command line all day or trying to remember what to type, Armitage is built into Kali. It's really neat GUI front end for Metasploit. And then when you get in the commercial side, they have a commercial product called Cobalt Strike. Again, really useful tool.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. What's great about these webcasts? I'm writing some of these down too because these are some tools I've never heard of. And speaking of PowerShell, I'm actually writing a course on Intro to Security Automation, and I'm learning more about PowerShell myself. And I see the trend in security. Automation is the key for securing large enterprises. So you see in a lot of these organizations, that's a skill set that they're looking for their potential employees to have, is to be able to programmatically approach security and be able to lock things down. And you mentioned Bro and Suricata. So the Security Onion Linux distribution is a great way. It has a lot of those tools all wrapped into one that you can kind of use and set up your own environment, or just run it on your home network and have a better and more secure home network.
The Security Onion is great. That was created by Doug Burks. Super humble guy, easy to approach, and if you ever have a question, you can reach out to him directly on Twitter. He'll usually get back to you within a 24-hour period. Really great guy.
Yeah, great point, and yeah, he's answered some of my questions too when I've done some stuff for that. So great, thanks for sharing that. So we've talked a little bit about some of your favorite tools. So where do you go to find these tools? And they can either be kind of an individual or organizational uses. So what are some of your resources, maybe kind of at the meta level, for finding some of these tools? And we'll go ahead and start with you, Randall, for this question.
Yeah, so I go to a lot of the resources that I've made, had relationships with through the interaction with the ISSA and a lot of other networking activities. LinkedIn is another great place to find information. I just read the stream all day long, and it's amazing the amount of information, especially after you start making some real good contacts within LinkedIn. Sectools.org, SEC2TOOLS.org. That's like a list of 125 different tools, and you can pretty much find anything that you need there in terms of security tools. So those are, a few ways that I find information. The ISSA is a great source of information in terms of education, and if you read the ISSA journal, a lot of times they have articles on this type of thing as well. So certainly the ISSA is a great place to start.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Randall. And just to remind everybody, so Leo will be sending out an email with all the links and about the tools we talked today. So you should, if you registered for this webcast, which you must have if you're listening, you'll get an email tomorrow that has a list of all these different different tools. And the ISSA journal, right, there's a Toolsmith column they have in there, and that always has some great great information. How about you, Daniel? So what are some of the places you go to find tools?
Well, that's actually an interesting question. To me, a lot of the tools, because a lot of times, you could spend a lot of time trying to find tools, but I personally, I always err on the side of caution to find tools that I know work for others. And a lot of that has to do with networking with people. Personally, I'm actually a part Slack. Certain organizations have Slack channels, and one of the organizations I'm in has a really good like a tools channel where people they talk about the different security tools they're working with. And for me, that's been a really good source to find the new tools that I want to work with.
Yeah, great. So that's a good point about finding what tools other people use. That way you don't have to maybe, because quite honestly, not all tools work well, and different tools are used for different situations. And I like to use GitHub too, and you'll see in your email tomorrow, I'm going to have several links for some different GitHub repositories that are kind of meta, that have a list of different tools. Great. All right, over to you, David. What is your where do you go to find different tools?
Well, so it all goes back to networking for me. So I'll give you an example. I was at DerbyCon a few years ago, was using Aircrack NG. That's a tool for sniffing wireless networks, and we were doing something fun, and I had been working with this guy all day using this tool. Turns out, the 23-year-old Thomas Otrep, who I was working with all day, is the guy that wrote it, right? So you can actually go to these events and actually meet some of the folks that have written these tools. Armitage, a tool I met earlier, the gentleman that wrote that is a captain in the Air Force Reserves, but he's at every major conference as a vendor sponsor. He has a table where he's giving away these disks for free. So networking is really big. But when I don't know something, there's a site called irongeek.com and there's a guy named Adrian Crenshaw. He goes by Iron Geek on Twitter. He's probably got one of the single most largest repositories of conference videos where you can watch speakers from B-Sides, from DEF CON, from Black Hat, all these various InfoSec conferences absolutely free of charge. And this is something that he hosts on his own. That's probably one of the most beneficial things. But networking and then throwing yourself in the fire, like signing up for a CTF. You may not know how to do anything, but that's how you learn, is sitting next to somebody else that does. It's one of the hardest lessons I learned early on in my career, was that I wasn't the smartest person on the planet. And I started learning more about what I didn't know, and that there was always somebody that knew more than me. You find that person, sit down next to them, and as long as you're humble, a lot of the times they're willing to teach you.
Yeah, that's a great point. And at conferences, I remember at one of the B-Sides Las Vegas conferences a couple of years ago, somebody was showing me how to do some cool stuff in Python because I was kind of new to Python. And two other kind of good websites for learning is cybrary.it and itpro.tv. They have some good training resources that you can use. And a lot of these conferences like DEF CON and Black Hat, they have YouTube channels, and they do post the videos from their talks. So next, I've got an audience question here. So here's the question: I'm trying to learn Splunk. I have it configured, but can someone point to some training resources for learning Splunk? Splunk experience seems to be very sought after. And so Splunk is an enterprise tool that costs money. So over to you, Randall. So any thoughts on this question?
Actually, I do not have any resources for learning Splunk.
Okay. How about you, Daniel?
Well, no resources in specific, but one thing I'll always say, when you're trying to capture information on the different devices that you want to feed in with Splunk, there's two things you have to consider. One is garbage in, garbage out, and two is, is this something you really have to collect? A lot of times people will have Splunk just collect everything possible, but one mistake that's made is, that gets expensive. And storing it on the back end, when you want to go search for things, if you have too much data that's erroneous, you're not going to be able to find the information you're looking for.
Yeah, great point. Okay, how about you, David?
Well, there's several resources, and the caveat with Splunk, right? So there is a community edition that's free. You're limited to so much data per month, but
Are you still there, David? I think we lost you.
Yeah, no, I'm here. So SplunkUniversity.com is one location, and then Splunk also has a lot of tutorials on their site as well.
Yeah, they sure do, and they have an academic program. So if you have an .edu address or you're a student at a school, they do work with academic institutions. So that's one way to go. Another way is, there's open source log tools. So you have the Elk Stack, Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana. I've had students do projects with that, and it's kind of similar, to Splunk. So you have to do a lot of the setup and stuff yourself, but that's actually a good way to learn how to set things up. And I know Logarithm, they recently released a freemium model. I think it's called Netmon, and you can do some of these same things. And so kind of an add-on question from the audience is, so how about any NetFlow or syslog training? So some of that does tie into the Elk Stack that I just mentioned. And the question, the person asking the question brings up a good point. It seems more like an art than a science. So how do you address that of, some of these tools, it really is more like an art to learn these tools. So could you talk about that a little, Randall?
Well, absolutely. And those tools are really going to pull everything. So you're going to get success logins, which you may not care about unless it's a firewall. You may get, a lot of logs that it's just noise, as someone else has said. You really have to understand how the operating systems work. You have to understand how the networking device works, and what is normal traffic and what is abnormal traffic. And once you can figure that out, then you have to figure out how to write your alert to be able to give you valuable information, because otherwise you get 10,000 alerts a second and it means nothing to you. So it really is an art that is informed by your expertise, based on the operating system, the way the networking devices, and really how you've configured them. Because you can configure the firewall to not send you any alerts, or you can configure it to send you every single thing it ever logs in. So you really have to not only buy a tool, but you really have to understand all those aspects of that in order to get to a point where you can get actionable alerts.
Yeah, great point, Randall. And I think that's one of the advantages of maybe messing around with something like the elk stack, because it kind of forces you to get to those fundamentals. Daniel, do you have anything to add to that?
Just with the elk stack, there's actually a product out there called, I believe, SimMonster, which I used in testing, but it kind of is like the elk stack without having to do all the work of setting up the elk stack.
Oh, great. Thanks for sharing that. And how about you, David? Anything to add to that?
Well, so yeah, going back to where you can go for training, one thing I forgot to add is that most of these vendors, if you work for a large company, it's easy to get somebody to come in and teach you about something. But going back to what we've all said about participating in groups like ISSA, you can actually use your ISSA chapter to reach out to do a lunch and learn, or a monthly dinner sponsorship where they can come in and actually teach you the basics of what their product does. It's not necessarily a product pitch, but our chapter will bring in companies like Logarithm or Cisco, or where they'll talk about NetFlow, and then what we ask them to do is to try to keep it from being a sales pitch, that the last 5 minutes of your presentation you can tell us how your product has benefited this area of expertise. But that's a good way to get some basics really quickly, is bringing out the experts. These guys are trying to make sales, trying to get business, but if you want to learn about the product, they'll be more than happy to come out and tell you about it.
Yeah, that's a great point. I know here in our San Diego chapter, the folks at Carbon Black came out. They did a lunch and learn, and they actually had hands-on labs, and participants were able to actually go in and do hands-on things. So that's a great point. So you find your local ISSA chapter. All right, so our next question from the audience, and this is kind of a shorter one, but podcast. I'm a big fan of podcasts, so we'll just go kind of around the panel and mention maybe your favorite podcast or a podcast you listen to on a daily basis. So over to you, Randall, for favorite podcast.
Well, I would have to say my favorite podcast is Security Weekly. I think that is really a cool podcast. They talk about security, but they really propagate the security culture. They have a lot of well-known folks on there as well. And Paul Asadorian used to work for Tenable. He also has a cigar podcast, which I enjoy as well. But securityweekly.com, that's a great podcast to listen to.
Great, thanks, Randall. Yeah, that's on my top of my list too. All right, over to you, Daniel.
So also Paul's Security Weekly, they also have an enterprise show, which for me is sometimes I feel more relevant. But to add one to the list, SANS, they do a internet storm podcast with Johannes Ulrich, and those are really short, maybe like 10, 15 minutes. So if there's one podcast that you want to listen to get threat information and current stuff, you would want to check out that SANS podcast.
Yeah, great. And SANS have a lot of other good webcasts, and same with Black Hills InfoSec. They have some nice webcasts they do too. Perfect. All right, David, over to you. What's your favorite podcast?
So one of my favorites is by a gentleman named Dave Kennedy. He is the founder of DerbyCon. He owns a company called Trusted Sec, and they do a weekly podcast that's very informative, and he's a great guy. So good site. And then of course Security Weekly, and there's also another one, O'Reilly. It's ORLY podcast. That's done by Larry Pesci from End Guardians.
Great, thanks for sharing that. And a new one I noticed just came out recently. It's cybersecurity interviews, and basically in this podcast, they're interviewing top professionals like Lenny Zelser, and it's a good way if you're new to the field, you can see how people got started. So that's another one that I would recommend. All right, so we're getting some great questions in here, and I love our audience here because they're pretty direct with their questions. So here's the next question. If any of you hire, what do you look for on the resume of a pre-professional? And kind of a follow-up, are you hiring right now? So over to you, Randall.
Yeah, so that's a great question. For a pre-professional, really would be somebody with a minimal of experience, education, certifications. Really what I'm looking for is attitude and aptitude. Those are two things. Well, now that I moved to Denver, I have to add a third one. That's altitude. But attitude and aptitude are the two biggest things, because I can teach you the rest. If you come in here and you really love it, you love being part of security, and you have a great ability to pick it up quickly, that's perfect for me, because we can get you in there, we can get you going, and we can really sort of understand what direction you need to go, what are your interests, and cultivate that, throughout your career. So attitude and aptitude are number one for me.
Perfect. All right. How about you, Daniel? What are your thoughts?
So interestingly enough, for somebody, especially somebody coming out of college, one thing that I'm looking for is community involvement. And when you're going to college, were you in a cybersecurity club? Were you participating in any of those capture the flags like CCDC in my area or whatnot? But really that motivation that shows that it's your passion, because as long as you have the passion, I'm sure I can teach you the rest. Well, passion and the aptitude, but that's what I look for.
Perfect. Thanks, Daniel. How about you, David?
So I guess that it always sucks going last because always everybody steals your answers, right? So the number one question that I interview people all the time, and I look for folks right out of school. I look for seasoned folks that have been in the field for a while, and also people with 10 to 15. Guys, can you hear me?
You're breaking up a little bit, Daniel. Or David, I'm sorry.
Yep, sorry. Are you there? Sorry about that. I lost my connection. So the number one question that I always ask people is, what do you do outside of work? And that's where I'm listening for the same exact thing. Like, are you passionate about this? I don't need you to fill my head with things I want to hear. I'm striking a conversation with you about what your interests are. But that's where I'm wanting to hear, oh, I like to go to conferences, I play in CTFs, I do things outside of work that help me be better at work, and that tells me that they're passionate about what they do. And that, while I'm going to invest in this person with the things that we invest in with, benefits that cost our company money, you're investing in us by making yourself better, which doesn't always cost me money. Right? And at the end of the day, we're all trying to make money with the companies that we work for. Those are things that are very important to somebody that's hiring somebody. You're going to make the investment that I'm going to invest in you.
Great, thanks for sharing that. So I want to kind of tack onto this question a little bit. So we've talked about competitions a little bit. So let's say somebody came to your organization and they're pre-professional, they don't really have an experience, but let's say they were on a team that made it to the finals of the National Collegiate Cyber Defense Competition, or they were in the top 100 of the National Cyber League, or maybe they got a high score on the Holiday Hack Challenge that Ed SCOTUS does. So would that actually, would you say, wow, that's pretty impressive, and would that, let's say, give them some points in their hiring process? And I'll start with you on that one, David, since I've been hitting you up last in the rotation.
Absolutely, it would. I probably landed one of my best jobs that got me the most amount of experience by winning a CTF at DEF CON. Right? So what does that do? I mean, for the individual, it builds credibility, right? So they'll have credibility within the community. It helps them network better because they're part of a winning team. And things like CCDC are amazing contests. I play in the Mid-Atlantic CCDC Red Team every year, and it's crazy just how much improvement I see from year to year with all the folks. Now you got colleges like West Point that have teams and events like the Joint Cyber Competition. You've got all these events that are popping up now all over the place. It absolutely builds experience and definitely holds a lot of weight when you're interviewing. If you come in and you have zero experience, but you've won a CTF, that now I can narrow my questions as to what level of effort you had on that team, right? So I can find out if you were the star player or, were you by yourself? That's impressive. If you were a team of one and you went into a big CTF of teams of 8 and you won, that's huge. Right? It absolutely gives credibility.
Great, thanks, David. How about you, Daniel? Would that participation and success in a CTF would that maybe give somebody an advantage or extra points in your hiring process?
To be honest, that's one of the most important things I would look for, because the people that engage in the CTFs, do well in the CTFs, they are going to be your superstars. I mean, maybe there's, obviously, social and other aspects, than just the technical aspect. But truthfully, somebody that can perform really well on a CTF, they're going to have what I'm looking for when I'm hiring, for sure.
Yeah, and I think one caveat too for CTFs: don't be afraid to participate. You may not do well your first time, but you're going to get better as you go along. I participated in the one of the B-sides CTFs a couple of years ago, and it was challenging. And it's some hard work, even if you're a seasoned professional. So it's a lot of fun, and you do learn a lot. And how about you, Randall?
And
what are your thoughts on? Good.
Sorry to interrupt, but one of the things our ISSA chapter did was we did a beginner and an advanced CTF event. So that way, people that are in our chapter, they could play in the beginner one. So maybe next year they could work on the advanced one.
But you talk about stress, though, right? With the CTF and folks that are intimidated to get involved. There are some events that I've participated in that I've told myself, if I ever came into work and it was this bad, I would really have to rethink some of my life choices here. Because I was in a CTF once. It took me 18 hours to do one mission. And I wouldn't have got it if I didn't get some help. So, yeah, these are great events.
And they're kind of addictive, too. All right, Randall, how about you? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that it really has to do with the level of the position you're hiring for, because if somebody's won a CTF, they're probably applying for higher level analysts. I have a Dave Kennedy story because we brought him up earlier. The Louisville Metro InfoSec had a capture the flag. And Dave Kennedy lives in Cleveland, and it's about a 2-hour drive from Cleveland to Louisville, Kentucky, and he didn't leave till 9 o'clock, and they started at 9. So he came in about 11 o'clock, and they had already had 2 hours to go. And Dave Kennedy sat down, and within about 30 minutes, he had figured the thing out, and he beat everybody. He was 2.5 hours late to the thing, but he beat everybody in the capture the flag. So that's pretty scary. So that type of a person that can win and capture the flag for me generally is a higher level position and not really a pre-professional, but definitely demonstrates the talent. If they have that talent, definitely bring them on if you can at that lower salary and cultivate that talent if you can. But for me, when I interview somebody for a security role, I have 2 really good questions that I ask them, and it demonstrates to me their level of expertise. And one is, explain DNS to me. And some people say, well, that's domain name services, and that's as deep as they can go. And some people will get into BindSec, and they'll get into a lot of the different things, which is really cool, and you can see that depth of experience there, as important as DNS is to what we do. The other one is, I'm going to take this Ethernet cable, I'm going to plug it in the wall. Explain to me what happens when I plug this in the wall. Between the time I plug it in the wall and I type in www.google.com and have a web page, what happens? Explain to me. And from that question, I can see the level or depth of interest and expertise that this individual may have.
It's so funny he said that because I had not remembered who you were, and we had talked about that at a conference a few years ago, and I was like,
Uh-huh.
man, if I ever got asked that, I mean, I've been doing this for 19 years, walking somebody through DNS, and
Right.
I've actually adopted that and used that in interviews. It's very successful
Nice.
in
It
finding
is,
folks
yes.
that are technical.
Mm. Yes, yes.
Good stuff.
And that's a great point too, because if you understand the fundamentals, you can pretty much learn any tool or how to apply those, right? So if you really understand how things work, you've got a good base of knowledge. So I'm going to let Randall start with this next question because the person asking this question mentioned she's in Denver. So she says, I'm an MS in IS Security and Criminal Forensics with CCNA Security. I love Kali and programming, and I'm a young female. Lots of people don't believe I can hack. How do you see female applicants in the industry?
Hmm. Well, I think there are a lot of females in our business that are pretty scary because I think they feel like they're coming in as an underdog and they have to demonstrate that they are better than everybody else. But I think that's a false narrative. I don't really look at the gender of the applicant. I look at what they've done, not only their education, their experience, and the certifications that they've got, but also their industry involvement. And in our industry, that's so important. Um, we have to be out there. We have to be constantly engaged. We have to be networking. You have to be part of the community. In security, that's so important. And, when you go to an ISSA event, we have some pretty scary females out there that will hack you to death. So definitely gender, I would not worry about that too much. Just make sure that you cover the bases in terms of experience, certifications, education, and then that attitude and aptitude. Just walk in there, demonstrate your passion, because that's what we're all looking for, is that passion for this industry, because we can teach you the rest if you don't have it, but if you have a passion for this, that's really what we're looking for.
Yeah, great point, Randall. And that's what's great about the InfoSec community. I really think it's a welcoming community regardless of any background, gender, or anything like that. So it's a really open community where we really try to help each other out. Daniel, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of times I see that, there is that kind of, some people there is a bias. But again, some of the smartest people I know are female. And, ISSA has the Women in Security Special Interest Group as well. So there are interest groups that are being formed to try and help promote and get women into cybersecurity. I mean, personally, I think we all need to do a better job of getting women into cybersecurity. And I think that, as long as we can get that on a organizational level, that'll be something that'll really benefit the community.
Yeah, that's a great point. And SANS has a nice, they do a lot of networking, free networking events for women in security when they're in their local area. So you may want to check out when SANS is in Denver. And anything to add to that, David?
Oh yeah, so I love going last, especially on this one. I happen to be a chairperson on the WSIG, the Women in Security Special Interest Group. For the person that asked that question in Colorado, step up, become an active part of that. You don't have to get in front of a lot of people. You don't have to, it's not anything that requires a lot of contribution, but it is definitely the way to fix this problem. It is an unspoken problem of gender inequality in every workplace, not just InfoSec.
Yeah.
But unfortunately our field is predominantly male. But the way to fix that is getting involved, right? Here I am. I'm a male on the Women in Security Special Interest Group, and I help champion projects and help get connections made and stuff. But why am I involved in it, right? I have a daughter who's 9, who's passionate about what I do for a living, and I have a sister who's 20, and she's also into information security. So getting them involved in STEM events and getting them linked up with groups like ISSA that does specialize in interest groups for women is beneficial for everybody.
Yeah,
And
that's
this
a
is
great
Randall.
point.
I would say
Yeah.
that, I'm sorry, this is Randall. I would just say, you have You have the MS, you have the forensics, you have the Cisco, you have the programming. That's
Yeah.
that's fantastic. Certainly the programming. Application security is the future. Folks that are in that understand it, are really good at application security, those are the folks of the future. Really, we really need great people who can do application security, right?
Great, and bringing up a point, my daughter, she's in her third year of Cyber Patriot too, so it's a great way to get the young ladies involved when they're in like middle school and high school, and that's another great way you can give back to the community. You can volunteer to mentor some of those teams and be a role model for those kids. So the next question, and I might be the best one to answer this one. So here's the question. I'm a graduate student at the University of Cincinnati, focusing in cybersecurity. I'm wondering, is there any area or tool we're putting artificial intelligence into intrusion detection systems or into any kind of defending systems is going on? So I'm going to kind of tackle this one a little bit first, and I'll turn it over to the panel. So there's a lot of good research going on in AI. Google Scholar is a good tool to kind of find out the latest research papers going on, and there's some great ACM and IEEE conferences that handle with this research. And I know there's a lot of startup companies around this area too. So you may want to take a look at startup companies that are embedding the AI into defending systems. So I'll go ahead and I'm going to rotate a little. So I'm going to let you tackle this one first, Daniel.
Yeah, so I mean, the one thing I would say is a lot of people these days are saying either artificial intelligence or machine learning, and I would say that there's different degrees to that. I know our university has some different projects that were involved with different either agencies or whatnot to actually create projects to do that. But in terms of tools that I'm seeing, it's more on the big data type side, not necessarily the artificial intelligence, but using big data to try and create patterns for intrusion detection.
Perfect. And also, if you're interested in doing that research, there's a lot of good NSF grants out there, to focus on those different areas. You may want to take a look at that. Any thoughts on this, David?
Yes, definitely. Google has a IDS, an open source artificial intelligence IDS called TensorFlow. That's pretty neat. There is definitely some up and coming vendors, major vendors like Palo Alto Networks that are incorporating AI into their technologies, and this is definitely the next step. I think signature-based detection is out for sure. AI based on octology is what it's called, is definitely in for the future, for sure. We're all going to be replaced soon by cyborg robots. Skynet. It's coming.
Great. And Randall, anything to add?
Yeah, I would agree that signature-based is out. It's really almost impossible to keep up with the amount of work that's going on there to exploit our networks, and a lot of research is going on. I really enjoy reading about the future things that are going on and the research, especially into big data and the identification of patterns. And really, it's all around anomaly detection and mining the data. So for me, I like to read about the artificial neural networks and the mathematical models that are being explored, the fuzzy inference. Those types of things for me are really cool. I have no idea what they mean, but I'm still trying to read them. But I think that represents the future of our industry. So definitely go out and read about it, because you're going to be asked someday to implement and administer these things.
Great. So, we've been talking a little bit about kind of the career side. Now I'd like to take us a little bit back to the technical side, and then we'll go through some of the more questions. So, we'll start with David on this one. So how do you build a home lab at little or no cost, and what are the components of a home lab?
So prior to our call, I sent some links to Leah that she'll send out. one of the best sites that I used early on was Iron Geek's site on setting up a home lab. It all goes back to talking about products like VMware. Obviously, VMware is not free, but VirtualBox, if you're on a budget, you can set up a real easy lab to break things. You can go on eBay and even on a college budget, you can buy a decent server for under $100, set it up at home, break it. You can set with those people that are studying for their CCNA. That's how I got my CCNP, was just buying gear off of eBay as I could afford it when I was coming up, and built a home lab. And now my home lab pretty much rivals my work environment, running like NAC and all the bells and whistles at home. So that's the way you get good at it, is just practicing it. Every major tradecraft, you have to practice to perfect it.
Great, thanks, David. And how about you, Daniel?
So I'm going to actually recommend something called the vMug Advantage. The VMware user group, they have a program called the vMug Advantage, which actually is as cheap as a couple $100, which will actually allow you to get the full VMware that you would be able to put on, like, let's say, a home lab server for just a couple $100. That way you could actually, get fully started, have all your VMs going without having to spend thousands of dollars on licensing and software. So that's something you could definitely take advantage of.
Great, and how about you, Randall?
Yeah, definitely the VMware virtualization products will allow you to be able to just buy one physical box and then stand up multiple. You can also, within virtualization, you can also segment your network, which is a cool thing that you can do in order to test, different things like a layer 2 and so forth. Definitely your firewall, pfSense is a great thing. You could stand that up for free, close ports, VPN, that type of thing. You may need a switch depending on how many devices you have. Certainly Kali or Backtrack is a device you want to play with within your lab. But you have to be careful within your home lab that you're not going out to the internet, because they do monitor. Your ISP is monitoring traffic, and if they see any of this traffic going on, they may shut you off. Make sure that you have like an XP box, things that are out there today in our businesses. XP is still out there for some reason. Windows 2003, 2008, hopefully no 2000 is out there still. I found Mimikatz is another one great to be able to test. John the Ripper, Cain and Abel, Poison Ivy, some of these tools that you can use within that contained lab environment, which are really hacker tools, but figure out how they work. And for us, we want to understand how they work because we want to understand what might be used against us. So we use that type of thing, DSNF, those type of tools within our lab, just because we want to understand how they work. And once that happens, in the certified ethical hacking training, there's a great lab that's done, and that is create a phishing attack. So you really think of hacking as trying to break through the firewall, trying to break through the web application and get on the inside. But today, it's so much easier to just phish somebody, right? So within the certified ethical hacker program, you learn how to phish somebody, create that phishing email with a link, and you stand up your own server, a web server, and as long as you can get somebody to click that link, they create a connection outbound, which is allowed by most organizations, and that's a reverse tunnel. So as soon as that server receives that, then they connect back in, and they're allowed back through your firewall because it's a reverse tunnel. The connection was sourced from an internal device, so they don't look at the return traffic. That's why it's so scary. So that's why phishing is so scary. So you do that all within the lab, and you actually can see how that happens. And then once you gain that connection, then you can look at what account do I have, what accounts are on the box, pull all the hashes, use the tools to crack all the hashes, and hopefully you can get a domain administrator in some way, and then you could pivot throughout the network. And just being able to do that, even in a lab environment, is so informative and escalates our education and knowledge around this.
Yeah, some great points there, and thanks for sharing. And another thing to consider too is, a lot of organizations are moving to the cloud, and a lot of providers like AWS and Microsoft Azure, they offer some free credits. So if you want to get some cloud experience, you can take advantage of those. Although you do have to use caution. You don't want to build the wrong kind of virtual machine and end up with a $200 bill, and you need to make sure you follow their security procedures so your instances don't get hacked, so to speak. So as kind of a piggyback question to this one, so I want to practice at home and on the weekends. Are there online labs and environments that I can use to build my skills? And we'll start with Daniel for this one.
So absolutely, there are a ton of them. If you actually Google it, you'll find just challenge VMs that you can download. One of the things that you could potentially also download is Metasploitable or Metasploitable 2, which just has a ton of services running on it that something like Metasploit would be able to exploit, and that's what I would recommend looking into.
Yeah, great. And in the email you get tomorrow, there'll be some CTFs. So those are those are online training that you can use. Essentially, participating in CTF is the same as I consider at least the same as training. How about you, David?
Same thing with the CTFs. It's an immeasurable tool to build up your skill set.
Great. And Randall, anything to add to that?
Yeah, the one that I refer a few students to is hackingdojo.com. It costs money, but if you really want to learn, that gives you the opportunity to do an online cloud-based testing. Another thing that I would recommend is Matillidae. Matillidae is a purposely insecure web application. It was developed by a gentleman named Jeremy Druin. He works for UPS, and he's a pen tester. And he went through the SANS Master's program, and his thesis was the creation of this Matillidae platform. And he has hundreds and hundreds of YouTube videos where he's demonstrating lots of different things, including some Matillidae. But it's a cool web application that you install on an internal lab box, and then you go about trying different attacks on it. And then if you dork it up, you hit the button and it resets it to factory, basically, and then you go attack it some more. But that's pretty cool. We'll include that in the link as well to his YouTube page and to the Matillidae site. Today, attacks against web applications are really something that we have to be concerned about. And if you know how those things work, you're a step ahead of everybody.
Great, thanks. And so here's the next question. So somebody's they're working on the NSA Codebreaker Challenge 2016. They've done several of the tasks, but the current tasks are working for. They have to do reverse engineering of an executable file. Can I know what is the best tool for doing reverse engineering? And we'll start with David on this one.
So the industry standard for reverse engineering is going to be IDA Pro. Obviously, that's not free, but they do have a free version that you can use. Getting in there and learning that it can be challenging, but for those that are determined to learn it, there's several things you can get on YouTube, and again, going to classes at these conferences and participating in CTFs, it's the quickest way to throw yourself into the fire. But IDA Pro is definitely the industry standard for reverse engineering.
Great, thanks. How about you, Randall? Any recommendations for reverse engineering tools?
Well, it depends on what language the original was written in. If you go to a site called wittylog.com, you'll find a lot of different tools there that are used for reverse engineering. but really the essence of it is to understand what's going on under the covers. So one site that I like to use is Fiddler, and it really gives me that web traffic, understanding how all the connections are being made and you know what the packets actually look like. So it's kind of a web sniffer. So for me, that that's the type of thing that we need to be doing, and certainly understand the registry as well, because anything that's attacking Windows, we have to understand where it's writing to those reg keys, and so those finding those reg keys and understanding what it's doing, the processes are doing, and so forth. That's very important.
Great, thanks for sharing, Randall. How about you, Daniel?
Well, the tool I use is also IDA, as that is pretty much the industry standard tool. Another tool I sometimes use is GDB, which I believe is open source. So that may be another tool you want to look into.
Great, and if you're a Mac user, Hopper too is another tool. If you're a Mac user, that's
and Xcode if you're a Mac user. That's
okay, yeah,
the gold standard.
Okay, so now we kind of did a little technical. Now we're going to kind of get back to a little bit about the career side. So the first question, and I'll let Randall take this one first. How do you feel about the OSCP certification, the Offensive Security Certified Professional? I think if I got that right.
Absolutely. So I think if somebody has passed that certification, they're pretty high level in terms of their skills. I think that is one of the more advanced certifications that you can get, and mostly it's because you can go in and you can demonstrate an expertise in using the various aspects of Kali Linux or Backtrack, that you understand the concepts of offensive security, whatever that means, but most of all, from my perspective, we are looking at somebody that can help us protect against those people who are out there, and they have varying levels of skills, and we want to make sure that we have people on the inside that have, at least as good skills as the folks that are trying to attack us. So we really have to have a good mix of folks that are starting out in the business and that are still learning in the business, and those people who can pass that type of an offensive certification. So those for me would be sort of my mid to high level folks on the teams around threat management, vulnerability management, incident response, that type of thing.
All right, great. Thanks, Randall. And Daniel, do you have anything to add with that with respect to the OSCP certification?
Well, sure. I think personally, at least with my group of people, I have a great respect for the people that went through the OSCP and passed it. I mean, it's not the easiest one to pass. So people that have gone through that, it shows that they had a commitment and they went through it and did it.
Great, thanks, Daniel. How about you, David? Anything to add?
Mine's real simple. If you have an OSCP and you're applying to work for me, you're getting hired. So that's
Okay.
a certification, bar none, that you have proven yourself. It's not a multiple guess test. There's no brain dumps available for it. The amount of people that have passed it is still under 1,000 worldwide. It's no joke. It's a great certification. Unfortunately, it doesn't hold any weight within U.S. public sector, which is where I primarily work. But if you can pass your OSCP, you can definitely pass your CEH. We can get you in the door doing U.S. public sector work.
Great, thanks for sharing that. So now a little bit of a higher level. So what does everybody think that the job landscape is for 2017? So what are the most sought after skills and hard to fill positions? And I'll start with Daniel on this one.
I mean, in terms of hard to fill positions, it really, I mean, it depends on what industry you're in. I mean, I'm in education, so a lot of the positions that we have are less specialized. So, I don't see as much of it. But whether it's pen testing or coding or secure design or firewall or all the different things. I mean, there's a lot of different fields.
Great, thanks, Dan. And I see, being able to program DevOps, secure DevOps. I think those are, and cloud-related skill sets, I think, are one of the growing areas too. How about you, David? What do you think?
Going back to Internet of Things, right? That's the new buzzword. That's not going away anywhere. Everybody thought it was a great idea to give everything an IP, including your refrigerator and your washer and dryer and all those things. So they all need to be protected. Of course, with IoT, security took the backseat to convenience. So that's definitely going to be up there with the AI stuff. I think in the next 5 years, we're going to have more challenges with IoT, as you're already seeing with Mirai, which has caused a lot of concerns for some folks. But artificial intelligence, going to DevOps, like you said, those are all great things. It definitely gives you something to focus on. I mean, if you got the spark and interest in InfoSec, there's just so many different things you can do. You could be a programmer if you're good at math. You could be a hardware guy or gal if you're into hardware. You can be architectural review and never touch systems and just draw it out for somebody else to build. There's just so many possibilities that you can work in this field.
Great, thanks, David. How about you, Randall? What do you think?
Well, in general, as I said before, the attitude and aptitude. I've hired people with no real security experience, but networking experience or development experience, writing scripts, desktop support. But if they show that passion, and they show the aptitude for it, I'll take that person over a SysP with 5 years experience every day, as long as they show me that attitude and aptitude. But from a skills experience, I'm really looking for somebody that understands ports and protocols, understands the OSI model, how do computers talk to each other, and what are the security ramifications of each layer, what are the risks and the threats to each layer, and what are the controls at each layer, and really an understanding of the differences between a threat and a vulnerability. It's so funny that I talk to people and they don't really have a basic understanding of what's the difference between a threat and a vulnerability, or a threat and a risk. And those types of things are really important questions to ask, and as a candidate, important questions to be able to answer intelligently and really understand the controls that we would use to secure a network, to secure data, and why do those things work, why do we use those things. If you have a networking background, if you have an application development background, those things can all be cultivated to make sure that we have a great, well-rounded team. And really, I want to make sure you understand risk, because that's really what the organization cares. That's why we're here, even though we do firewalls or we do antivirus or we do identity access management. We're really here to control risk for the organization. And why is that valuable to them? What does that mean to them? And then ultimately, I would say, your communication skills are going to be really important, translating the technical to people who are not technical, and writing skills. How many people have I seen their email? I cringe when they get ready to send an email. Make sure that you see other people writing emails and try to craft your emails in the same way, because it's so important. You come across a certain way, and if you come across as somebody that cannot communicate, you're going to be very limited in your career. And as stupid as that sounds, it's really, really important. And really, a cultural fit. You have to understand the culture of the organization you're applying to. Make sure that you understand why they're that way, and are you a good fit for that organization? Because they're not going. If you're not a fit, number one, they're not going to want you, and number two, you're going to have a hard time if you're working there. So really try to understand the culture of that organization, and make sure you're a fit from that way as well.
Thanks, Raylan. You make a great point about email and writing because in many cases, email is your first impression with that organization you're communicating with. So it could
Yes,
just be the initial email to get an interview, right? And if you're, you
absolutely.
sign it Fuzzy Bunny 22 or something like that, or, you have lowercase, and emojis and
Right.
things like that, that could, the interviewer may not, that may not make a good impression for you. So,
And you send a thank you email when you're talking to these people and they give you their email address. Send them a thank you email every single time because you have no idea that no one else is doing that. Send them a thank you. Thank them for their time. They took time to talk to you. They didn't have to. Thank them for their time. That's so important. And reiterate that you're still interested in the position. After speaking to them, I'm still very interested in this position. That's very, very important.
yeah, and the person if they didn't pick you and the person they picked doesn't work out, you may be number two and you didn't even know it. So,
Yep,
yeah,
absolutely.
always stay friendly. So, great point. So, this next question I think is directed at David, and you don't have to share this if you don't want to. But which company did the gentleman work for who said, if you have an OSCP, you're hired? Uh, was that you, David?
Yeah, so I work for Cyber Defense Technologies. We're a services company, so those skills are incredibly important. We do pen testing for state and federal customers. Those skills are absolutely in demand right now, and we can't find enough qualified candidates. So OSCP is always a great foot in the door to an organization like ours.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. And this kind of dovetails a little bit with the next question. So, and I hear a lot of people people that are in the pre-professional entry level ask this type of question. So, looking for career opportunities, they go to these job boards. Most of these job boards say, 4 to 5 years of security experience or knowledge of a system that they don't have experience with. So, how do they handle these postings? And the question, the person asking the questions mentioned, I rarely see any job posted for which I have all the qualifications, and then it can be demotivating for them. So over to you, Daniel. What do you think about that? How do people get around these? And I see some of the job descriptions, and I've been doing this for 16, 17 years, and I probably don't have enough experience
So,
for those jobs.
it's really, really, really funny that you say that because that is so true. I mean, it is to the point where people are always asking for experience that just doesn't exist. I mean, to really go to what David was saying, how, he is looking so hard to find qualified people and he can't find qualified people. Well, the truth of the matter is we like to write these, position descriptions to just reach for the moon, but really it's not the truth. So the answer to that question is when you network, when you join an organization like ISSA, you can bypass a lot of that by networking with people. You get somebody on the inside that to send your resume over to the hiring manager. The hiring manager can then, say to HR, I'd like this resume out of the pool. Establishing those connections in the industry will allow you to maybe, let's say you have 2 years experience and it says 5 or 6 years. Well, maybe the hiring manager really meant to be flexible on that, but it's just HR, and HR doesn't really know who they're looking through. So when you're a part of ISSA, go to conferences, DEF CON, B-Sides, all the different things, you will find ways to bypass those requirements because people will say, oh, well, I know him or her, and let's get them in. And that's my recommendation.
Great. That's some great points there. How about you, David? What do you think about that? How do people get past some of these Uber requirements, so to speak?
Well, I've been involved with writing descriptions for requisitions, and it's, you got 30 minutes to get it done. You got an hour to get it to HR. Then it's going to take them 2 weeks to actually publish it and get it out there. And of course, with a large company, they've got filtering mechanisms that look for keywords. What I used to do when I was getting started is I would actually put the keywords on my resume in like white fonts and then upload it through their system so it it actually would hit all the filters for everything that they were looking for. It's a little harder to do now, but back in the day it worked really well. But I don't think it can be said enough. Getting involved with the InfoSec community, it shows passion that you're seriously interested in the field, and there's nothing that works in your benefit better than a Dave Kennedy picking up the phone and calling his buddy that's the CEO of another company and saying, this guy would be a great fit for that position you have open, right? How do you get that? You get that by volunteering for a conference like DerbyCon, working your tail off, and him seeing that firsthand, and getting to know people like Dave. And it's not just Dave Kennedy, right? Like there's so many different events that you can go to, get involved, build your skill set, build your network, socialize, and that's really how you get your foot into the doors of those Fortune 50 companies that you really want to work at.
Great points there. How about you, Randall? What do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree with everybody. It's very difficult to find people today. Even though we have 30 applications, 30 candidates apply or more, sometimes they don't fit that HR, cookie cutter. So what I try to do is let me look at them. Don't filter them first. Let me look at them. So I spend the extra time to go through them, and I find the auto mechanics that want to get into IT and that type of thing. But you go through that process. Make sure that you're looking at everybody, and even folks that are not in your geographical area. Be willing to relocate if you can, because there are some really great people out there. You have to really be able to demonstrate a good foundation of knowledge. You have to be able to demonstrate that aptitude in this business, even if you don't have any experience. There are lots of ways to demonstrate an aptitude. And if you get that interview, show that aptitude, that attitude, and that passion that you have. Why do you want to be in this business? Why do you care about security? Go into IT, rack servers, project manage, whatever you need to do. Why do you want to go into security? Be able to demonstrate, talk about why you want to do that, because that's really important for folks like me that are trying to cultivate people. And it is really who you know. There are so many opportunities in security through the ISSA, ISACA is another one, ISC Squared, OWASP, InfraGard. There's so many organizations, healthcare, there's HIMSS, that you can get involved with and go to meetings, and they'll send you all kinds of stuff every day, all day long, that you can just soak up and learn. And when I was starting out, I soaked up everything that I could possibly get my hands on, websites, emails I got from all these organizations. Go to the meetings. If you're at a meeting and you don't know somebody, change it. Go up to them, introduce yourself, say, hi, my name is Randall Fritchie. I've only been in this for 6 months, or I'm still trying to break into security. Introduce yourself. Go up to people. If you're in the room and you don't know somebody, change that. And go to do things that demonstrate that expertise, or even if you don't have any expertise yet, the knowledge or the passion, capture the flag. Volunteer for these organizations. Even if you have never been in security, go sit at a booth at a conference for them. Do something. Help them out, because they're going to get to know you, and they're going to help you. There are so many people within ISSA who are willing to be mentors and are really get a reward out of helping people get started in this business. Get to know those people. Volunteer for the ISSA. Get involved. Show up at meetings. And the other thing I might say is, write a blog. You're interested. There's so many social networking things and internet things that you can do. Just create a blog and just write. Post on LinkedIn. Create a post on LinkedIn. Respond. Get noticed. Demonstrate that knowledge. That's really, really important as you get started, but it's also very important even as you progress through your career, even to the senior level. You're still going to continue doing those things because they're still valuable, right?
Great, thanks, Reno. So that's some great points. And so we're almost out of time here. So I just want to answer one question real quick. the question was, is VirtualBox a good tool? And yeah, it is a great tool. It's free. You can learn a lot of you can learn virtualization, and you can play with different, learn how to use different tools with that. So as we kind of wrap up here, I'd just like to give the panelists go around one more time, and maybe if you could give our participants kind of one or two action items you think they should do if they're kind of in the entry-level pre-professional, either learn a tool or you know, do an event or something like that. And since David has gone last most of the morning, I'll let David go first for this kind of final thoughts.
Yeah, so you know, closing out, I think the overall resounding theme of pretty much what we've all said is honing your people skills, right? I wouldn't be where I'm at right now, enjoying the lifestyle that I enjoy, doing what I am most passionate about within my career field, if it weren't for my people skills. And they've changed tremendously from just, you know, 10 years ago when it was just getting my career started to where I'm at now. If you can take away anything from this this session is people skills, people skills, people skills. Work on those people skills. Get involved with the community. Show your interest. Build your skill set, and the jobs and the great salaries and those things, they will come. You don't have to hunt for them. They'll find you.
Great advice. How about you, Daniel?
So I'm going to play off what David Vaughn is saying, because for me, I'll say for me 10 years ago, I didn't have the people skills at all. And being a part of ISSA and other organizations helped me get them to, and it just affects every part of your daily work. Now, the point is, one thing I want to leave you with is, you know, let's say you do go to conferences, and let's say you do all these things, CTFs and all these other things we're talking about. One of the things David also mentioned earlier was, you know, he just randomly ran into the guy that wrote the tool that he was using. Well, one thing that I'd like you to remember is when you go to conferences, it's not just the talks that you should be going to. You should think of a conference as a way to meet people. So even if it's, you know, even if you're just in the hallway, do hallway con. Hey, you know, who are you working, what are you doing? And if you kind of just be really nice to people and go out of your way to meet people, you will have a lot more success. You will meet the coolest people, and it's those people that will then help you get to where you want to be, because they'll talk about things that you had never considered. And that's what I want to leave you with. Talk to people.
Awesome advice, Daniel. Thanks a lot. And last but not least, how about you, Randall?
Yeah, thank you. So really, most of all, we have to understand what value security is to the business. We have to understand that we can't be the security police. We're there to drive the business, to help them understand how they can leverage technology to make sure they have a stable, secure platform so they can operate and grow the business and be competitive. So you have to be that valued consultant that understands the technology, understands how to protect it so that that business can continue to do what it does. So you learn the threats against the business, you learn the tools and the techniques and the controls needed to protect the business, to protect the information, to protect the network infrastructure. And in order to do that, not only do you have to go get education and certifications and so forth, but volunteer, go to the ISSA meetings, learn, network with everybody, find a mentor. Find somebody that's willing to help you and guide you in your career. Demonstrate your passion, because that, for me, is the number one thing you can do. Demonstrate a passion for this business, and you will never fail.
Awesome. Great advice by all the panelists, and thanks everybody on the panel for taking time out of your busy schedule to share your knowledge, expertise, and advice with our audience. And special thanks to our audience for participating today. I know everybody's busy, and we appreciate you listening to our presentation. A post-event evaluation form can be found in the comments section, and there's a random drawing for an Amazon gift card for completing that form, and we do appreciate your feedback, because that does help us plan out the next events and make sure we're doing the right topics that make our audience that are most appropriate for our audience. If you have any additional questions you'd like to ask the speakers, you can contact Leah Lewis at Lewis, Lewis at ISSA.org, and she'll forward those to us. And then for more information on ISSA cybersecurity career lifecycle, please visit www.issa.org. And I'd like to give a shout out for Candy Alexander. She's the leader of our group, and she keeps us organized, and she sets a lot of this up. And a shout out for Leah, who keeps us all on track, make sure we have the right information, make sure we're on time for everything, and really keeps us organized. So thanks everybody for your time today, and we look forward to seeing you on future webcasts.